What does an 18-year veteran of the tech industry and a 20-year veteran of the military have in common? More than you might think. Welcome, everyone, to the Second Act podcast, leveling up your life's journey. All right, welcome back to the Second Act. How you doing today, John?
Michael, I'm doing well. It is a great start to the week, middle of the week, I guess we are at. And I'll tell you something, just to jump in, I'll tell you something that I've been enjoying.
Yeah.
A friend of mine told me about Revisionist History. This is podcast by Malcolm Gladwell. And if you haven't heard it, I highly recommend it. It's Malcolm Gladwell, first of all, is phenomenal. His books are amazing. If you haven't read Tipping Point or David and Goliath or, Outliers, amazing books. But then somebody said, hey, you should listen to his podcast. Well, I didn't realize he started a podcast in 2016. And he goes back and he looks at a lot of stories that maybe have been misconstrued or need to go back and look at them in a different lens, with maybe more data or more amplifying information. And it is amazing. They're so captivating. I just finished season 1, which was 2016, I think, or 17. I'm in season 2. And I just listen to these every day when I'm in the car going back and forth to Denver, to the airport. But I brought that up because I think of it a lot like this podcast. In some ways, we are, encouraging sort of a revisionist history in people's lives where they can stop and look at some of the decisions maybe they looked at a couple of years ago and said, nah, that's not the right time. That's not, it's too risky right now. And they're able to go back and get into something maybe that they've put off. And I think this episode has a lot to, play off this whole thing of revisionist history, but, man, it's really cool. And so I am actually jazzed to get in the car and turn those on. So enough about me.
No, I love that, though, because even the life that you've lived, new experiences and distance between the point in time that you've had that experience and now can change the way you think things happened in the past.
Absolutely.
And as you gain new experiences and meet new people and garner new perspectives, you can shift your mind on things. You might have been so rigid in thinking one way 1, 5, 10 or more years ago, and then new information comes and you have a completely different outlook on life and people and relationships and things like that. And it's really fascinating.
Well,
So
before we kicked off the show, you mentioned that you took a trip, I think, this weekend. I want to hear about that because I'm on the edge of my seat.
I did. I'm glad. And I'm going to really tee this up as best as I can. We both live in Colorado and are super fans of the state. It has so much to offer, especially if you're into the great outdoors. All year round, it's a destination place. There's nothing like the Rocky Mountains. And I've been to a lot of the mountain towns here at all different seasons of the year, but I have never been to up to the Winter Park, Mary Jane area. And then never, Linda. And I don't want to spoil your intro here, but yes, it is a new experience for me. And there's a couple of factors that I really loved about it. First, you get to avoid the Eisenhower Tunnel and the traffic at Georgetown. So if you know the I-70 route and all the people who have moved to Colorado, you know the pain of dealing with that. So you get to avoid that by heading up the Granby exit and taking this windy road up to about 11,000 or so feet and then back down to get to these mountain towns. But we didn't go to the mountain towns, although we did stop for an amazing sandwich at this place called the Rollins Deli, if you're ever looking for a good sandwich. But we did keep going about 5 or 10 miles further to this place called the Devil's Thumb Ranch. If you have not heard or seen the Devil's Thumb Ranch, it is one of the most spectacular properties I have ever seen or experienced in my life. And I'm always curious about the history of it. And the owners of it bought two branches back in 2001 and combined them into one 6,500-acre property that overlooks the Continental Divide. It's really beautiful. There's horses you can ride. There's trails you can go on. There's just all kinds of stuff. It's kid friendly if you
Yeah.
have kids. And we spent a lot of time outside in the beautiful fall weather, and we will certainly be going back. So if you are looking to splurge on something with your significant other or with a group of friends, highly recommend
I'm
it.
looking at pictures now, Michael, and I think we need to do a second act retreat here with maybe some of our listeners soon. This is amazing. This is beautiful.
So one of the videos I shared on Instagram was just walking, and I tried to put some music to it and put some words, and it kind of sucks. I'm not great at this stuff yet, but it's getting a little better each day. And then the other one was me just going on a walk in my neighborhood where there's this little like farm in the middle of it, and there's these goats that a couple of them had babies, and so the goats are just wandering around, and the fall leaves are coming down, so they like to eat the leaves, so you can actually feed them, and
Yeah.
they're very friendly and cute looking, and I don't know, something about
beautiful.
goats are just very friendly
I
animals.
love goats. So it must be the Norwegian.
It must be the Norwegian, yeah. Yes.
Well, enough about us.
Yeah, enough
We're not
about
here.
us
We're
and
not
this
here to-
chatter. We're here. It's not about us. It's about our guests. And today we have a absolutely outstanding guest, Linda Hafstad today, a visionary leader who recently spent time with Sir Richard Branson on Necker Island. Yep. Linda is the founder and CEO of Ekte Media, a company that champions integrity and authenticity through specialized brand design, website, and brand positioning strategy services. Though early in her career, she's already a trailblazer, honored with prestigious awards like the Outstanding Leadership Award at the Marketing 2.0 conference and the Maverick Next Impact Award. Her passion lies in forging powerful partnerships with impact-driven organizations to drive global change. With deep expertise in storytelling and brand strategy, Linda empowers companies tackling global challenges to craft compelling narratives. At Ekte, which means real in Norwegian, Linda and her team are dedicated to working with companies genuinely striving to make a real difference. They offer strategic and creative services designed to elevate brand credibility and amplify impactful missions. Linda's recent experiences underscore a powerful lesson. Integrating impact into your business model not only changes the world, but also actually accelerates growth. Focusing on causes that matter, businesses gain long-term support from consumers who believe in their mission beyond just products. So please join me in welcoming Linda to the show.
Welcome, Linda.
Thank you.
Man,
I'm very excited to be here.
I don't know what you've been doing with your life, but it sounds like you've been just sitting around on your hands.
Just sitting around doing nothing. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I'm consistently told that I'm doing too much, quote unquote, but I think otherwise. I think it's necessary.
well, I would say for a 50-year-old, you're doing great. However, you're 21. Is that correct?
Yep.
Jeez.
When I was 21, there's 0% chance I was on Necker Island with Sir Richard Branson.
I was 20 when I went to Necker Island.
Jeez.
20, even better. That's impressive.
All
Oh
right.
Thank
my
you.
gosh.
Yeah.
So you'll have to tell us more about that story. But before we get into that fun stuff, why don't you tell us about some of the earlier part of life? Where did you grow up? Tell us a little bit about your family and sort of what shaped who you are today.
Yeah. So I grew up as a bit of an expat kid. So I was living all over the world from when I was very young up until high school. Spent a lot of time in Norway. Ended up in boarding school for a year. Not the bad kid boarding school, but more of just like my mom was working in Saudi Arabia, so I couldn't
Wow.
come with her. So it was like, okay, this is
Okay.
what we're gonna do. And I was I think, 11 when I went to boarding school.
Oh, wow.
After that, yeah, it was a back and forth between Norway, Houston, and then I lived in Hawaii for a bit, spent most of high school in California, and then pretty much immediately after high school, I just started traveling. And that was, I'd say in 2023, I had lived in Seattle, Mexico, Colorado, Houston, bunch of different places. Amazing experience. But yeah, I mean, I've been a big traveler. That's a big root of like why I'm a business owner. I like the freedom that comes with it. Gives me the ability to work from whatever time zone, not have anybody like barking behind my shoulder saying like, you said you're working from home, but you're in Italy right now, like, but home is anywhere I am, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
True.
but yeah, I get a one of the things that I was really surprised about hearing recently was my mom and my brother brought it to my attention, like, one of the biggest things that they tell people when they're talking about me is, "Oh, she had a 4.0 GPA, she had the whole world in front of her, and she chose to just not go to college and pursue this business that could have very well failed." Like, she was setting herself up with plan A and no plan B. But through that, it's quite funny. I applied to 2 universities. I said, "If I don't get into either of these, then it's not gonna happen. It's a sign." I didn't give myself many options. It was like if I had applied to 10, I probably would have gotten into one of them, but I applied to 2 difficult universities and
Okay.
got rejected from both. And just last year, I got invited to, or I think it was earlier this year, I got invited to speak at UCLA, which was one of those 2 universities.
Wow.
Uh,
That's
and
cool.
it's just great because it's a reflection moment when you realize that I took a very difficult path with a lot of risk, not going to university. I kind of set myself 4 years behind, but I walked into it thinking, if by the time I would have graduated from university, I had 4 plus years of work experience and I had been building this, I should be able to, like, take job applications from my peers at that point, right? And that's exactly what happened. So, I kind of love that part of the story.
Yeah.
I love the, a tad of self-sabotage, applying to really hard schools, intentionally to hope to get rejected so that you can stay your path. And I know that there's been moments in my life where I've probably thought about or even did some of the same things, not in the same way, but put myself in a position where it's unlikely that I was going to, exceed or excel in that direction. But it was because I actually really consciously or subconsciously wanted to go in another direction. Um, but yeah, and then it comes full circle. Now you're being asked to come speak because of the impact that you're making so early in your life. Where does um that self-confidence come from, confidence in yourself to be able to deliver? I know you said you had a 4.0 GPA, so that is great. Good job on that.
Yeah, thank you to ChatGPT for helping me through my senior year of high school, but,
Yeah.
no, I don't even think ChatGPT was out at that time. It was just
No,
Google. No, thank you to Google.
it was
Um,
Google. Google.
but, yeah, I can't give you a solid answer because I feel like this drive has always been very deeply rooted. I knew I wasn't gonna be happy unless I was doing something I was extremely passionate about. I've always been somebody who knows how short life is,
Yeah.
and I knew if I got a early start on life and building something where I would eventually have security and freedom and be on completely my own terms doing whatever I want, that would make my life more fulfilling. It would mean that, like, by the time people would normally retire, I would hope that I don't ever want to retire. That's another big thing. It's like
Yeah.
I really pray that one day when I get to that point, I am so passionate still that it's like, why would I retire? Like, I want to keep doing this. And that's not a luxury that a lot of people get to have. So it's like you have to start really early with building that. And a big thing that I always say is I signed up for this. When things get hard, I remind myself I signed up for this, and it keeps me going. It reminds me that, like, you knew it was going to be hard. It's always going to be hard, but in order to get where you want to be, you can't quit.
And you said life is short. A lot of people at your age aren't thinking exactly like that. They think there's so much life in front of them. And it isn't until later in life that you realize how short life really is. Is there something that influenced that thinking for you that said, hey, you never know what tomorrow brings, and take risks, see where it goes, have confidence in yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I think traveling so much as a very young kid and all throughout my adolescence really taught me that the world is much bigger than we think. And I got to think so much further outside of the little bubble that most children have around them. They don't realize how short life is because they're brought up in like a small town community where they only see the lifestyles of other people who are just like them. And their parents' friends spend their time with their parents, like drinking wine on a Saturday night when my parents would be saying, "Okay, let's go to Egypt for the 3rd time." And I love that. It's like, wow, there's a much bigger world than just me. I think something I really struggled with when I was growing up was the fact that my parents made, or at least my mom made, a very solid decision that she wasn't going to have kids until she was very financially stable. So she had my brother at 32, but I came along as an accident when she was 40. Um, and I grew up with this fear of like, "Oh my god, like, my parents are gonna die soon. Like, they're so old. They're so old."
Hmm.
And that's a fear that I have a few people who have felt that before, and it's not a nice feeling, and it never leaves. So, I don't know, I guess I just grew up thinking like, "Wow, like, my parents aren't gonna be here for much longer. Am I really gonna spend the entire majority of the life that I have left with them working in a cubicle? Or do I want to build something
Interesting.
fast so that I can spend more time with them and take them on nice trips and really live with them?" Because we don't have that long with our parents. We don't
Yep.
have that long with anyone. So people played a huge role in it.
Wow. Michael, I think you'll recognize, or you already recognize this, and Linda, I know, first time on the show, but we interview so many people that put their plan A on a shelf and they go to plan B.
I never had a plan B.
Right, right. And they go to plan B because that's usually the most safe, secure um, direction that
Yep.
that they feel is fits their needs. But then we interview a lot of people that get to 30 years down the road on their plan B, and they go back to their plan A. So I love that you said I didn't have a plan B, because when you um, don't have a plan B, you make it work. Um, that's the theory that my wife and I have about our marriage is, we don't have a plan B. This is the way it's going to be.
This is it.
And I just love that you started out with that attitude. I like to say, when you wait till the last minute, you only have a minute to get prepared. um, and I think when you only have a plan A, you're going to make plan A work, because you don't see a way out. And so it's incredibly commendable for you to start that direction.
Thank you.
But let me ask you, did you ever think, ah, maybe plan B might be a little easier or a little safer? Or was there ever a time that you thought, this is really, really risky and I'm really young? I don't know if I'm in the right place.
I'd say I go through that set of questions about every week. That is like, there's no specific experience for me. I think it's a part of every entrepreneur's journey to wonder what it would be like if you could just have a stable income. If you
Sure.
could just show up, work 9 to 5, and then when work is over. You get to just do what you want. But that usually comes at the times where things don't feel like they're gonna work out, and they're very frequent times. It's like we see so many ups and downs, and it's so volatile to run a business, especially like an early stage business,
Yeah.
that every other day I just think about salary and I kind of glamorize it. I'm like, "Oh, salary, set schedule." But I did it once and it taught me that I never wanted to do it again.
Wow.
And kind of around your question and your story, Linda, has elements of this. I think people think uh, too binary about things. Like it's not an either or forever. If you want to experiment and try the plan A entrepreneurial path at
Yeah.
any stage in life, you go for it. Do it. A year into it, everything's going to be okay. It's not going to be maybe the way you imagined. You're not going to be, Jeff Bezos rich after a year, and that's okay. But many other things are going to sort of fall into your universe that you weren't expecting in good ways. And there's a few like things that might annoy you or get in the way, but um, it's not binary. You can adjust your path however you want to go. If you want to spend 2 years trying to make a go of something and then pivot into the corporate sector because you need to make a living or because you have other circumstances,
Yeah.
do that. And then 5 years later, if you got the itch again to be an entrepreneur and you're in a position to be able to do that, move back out. And it's becoming easier and easier today to do that with the tools and technology and resources available on a global level. It's really absolutely astounding to me what has changed over the last, I mean, since I've been in the tech industry. I can't believe it's like 20 years now. But
So old, Michael.
it's just, it's crazy. But it's just amazing. And where you are strong, their tools, especially AI tools, can augment your weaknesses and inform you and even do work for you in certain areas. It may not be the best of the best, but it's going to get you a lot further than you maybe could have gotten before those tools existed.
Yeah.
So I think it's awesome, Linda, that you are going after your plan A with no plan B. It's not the first time I've heard somebody say they have no plan B. And the first time I heard it, I was playing tennis and I was like, I had to think about that. I was like, no plan B. That's pretty risky. But I actually liked it a lot because it's a forcing mechanism for you to figure stuff out. And I like people that are willing to give stuff a try and figure it out as they go. Because as long as you don't like quit, just flat out quit. It doesn't matter how slow you go or which turns you make. As long as you don't quit, I
Or
respect it.
maybe you do quit after you've realized that's not the
If
direction
it's
you want
not
to
for
go.
you.
Yeah. I would still say you
100%.
learn
100%.
so much in starting.
Yeah.
That's where I think the real accolades lie, is starting something and
Yeah.
letting it unfold down the road.
I have a challenging
Yep.
relationship with that thought.
Let's hear it.
I like quitting isn't in my vocabulary. And so when I hear the stories of entrepreneurs that started something that didn't work out and then they quit and they started something else, it kind of like sets off an alarm to me. And I actually made a post about it like way back in, I think, 2021 after graduating. I was making all this entrepreneurship content on TikTok and it did really well. But one of them was somebody saying, like, oh, my company failed. And my response was like wiping off and clarifying what that actually meant. And I said, I quit too early.
It's possible. I- If you think of it as an experiment, everything is an experiment. Some experiments fail, and you know that's not going to result in anything more.
Yeah.
And if you think of life as an experiment, you try things and it may not be for you. It could be for other people. But if you're a serial experimenter and you serial quitting too soon, I
Yeah.
agree with you. Like some people, I think, just give up too soon.
I think if there's a passion and you feel that passion when you're walking into it, there's no limit
Yeah.
to the amount of pivots you can make.
Sure.
Like, the amount of pivots I've made with this company since I started it, it's just so strange to look back, know where we are right now, and wonder how I got the clarity to get there, because I started off as a social media manager with the company. That's what it was. I don't even do social media management anymore. Like, we had a different name. We had a different color scheme, a different logo, and then as things went on, as you do the work to, like, educate yourself and clarify what that vision actually is, that just starts building upon itself and creating something extremely powerful, and, like, they do say it takes, like, 4 to 7 years to develop a strong story, and it's true
Yeah.
because when you start out, you think the story is one thing, and it's something completely
Yeah.
different at the end of the day.
Absolutely. But did you quit being a social media manager or did you just evolve or pivot into something that was actually bigger from the beginning?
I'm great at social media. Like, I've easily grown over 100, or not 100, 1,000,000 organic followers for different clients that I had. But when I started working in the impact space and more in the brand space, I started realizing where the true value came from and the real impact that I could have on the businesses. And that is like, social media is great. I would rather train somebody on how to execute a really powerful strategy than use all of my resources and time executing it. One, because if you start with social media or if you start with advertising and there's no strong foundation behind it, it's useless. And I say this so frequently. You can't take 2 steps forward before you actually know where you're stepping. Like, I don't know if that's a great analogy, but I it's not that quit doing social media. It's something I advise a lot on, but I just only have so many hours in a day, and that's another realization that you come to as companies start to get bigger. Where
Yeah.
is your focus best spent? Where is your creative energy best spent? And it's not gonna be on all of the, like, menial execution tasks on client projects.
Linda, I agree with you about quitting, but I think there's a difference in quitting and failing. Quitting, to me, take the game of basketball. Quitting is you just walk off the court before the clock ends, and you're done, and you never come back on the court again. Failure is you played until the clock ends, and you just didn't have as many points as your opponent did. That may be a failure or a loss or whatever. And I think it's important to dissect both because, as I said earlier, I think starting is the most important thing. Starting is usually the hardest thing for people to do. And if they get to a point where they realize, "Hey, I I failed. I didn't recognize my strengths well enough. I didn't build my team, or I failed to recognize the holes I had, or, the market segment I was in." I think that's okay. I think when you just close up shop and you walk away, that's where the problem is, right? Because you're not exploring the full potential, or you're not playing until the clock ends. Would you concur with that?
Yeah, 100%. I know we've been through our fair share of situations where we were targeting a completely different audience than we target now. We were doing completely different things. Our pricing model has changed, our outreach model has changed. And I think that you have to go through like 3 to 5 major pivots before you see the results you're looking for. I don't know anyone who's gotten it right the first time,
Sure.
but I will say the reason that I've been able to scale so fast in the last almost 2 years now is because I've surrounded myself with advisors and mentors and peers who are doing the same thing or who have already done it, who are at least double as successful as me. Because, like, what's the point of asking for help if you're not going to use it?
Coachability is one of the most important characteristics of a person in any organization, in my opinion. I've seen that with people that I've had work for me, and I've been told that I am coachable, which at the time I had to think about, I was like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. But looking back, it turned out to be a good thing because, like you said, someone is trying to impart wisdom and advice on you based on experience because they see things, they see potential, but maybe you're just making a few missteps and they want you to head in the right direction. So if you're open to that feedback, but a lot of people, often take it as criticism, and people don't like criticism. But that's not how you grow. And I think everyone should be looking for people to help
Yep.
them grow in a constructive way with both good and, maybe some bad feedback at times. Like, hey, you're being lazy. Get your ass up and get moving, or maybe something not quite that harsh, but
I think the people who take the time to provide, I wouldn't call it bad feedback. I would say the people who take the time to point out where you're lacking are the people who are paying the most attention and who care the most. And that's why I tell people, like,
yeah,
if a customer says something negative on social media, they may just be like, it obviously depends on the situation. It may just be them not knowing how to properly communicate the fact that they're trying to help you.
Sure.
hmm
You have to learn how to take it like a champ.
Love it.
Well, that's a great segue, I think, into your journey to date in brand and media and exciting things going on at Ekte. So, using your feedback and mentorship, tell us, where you are in the journey and some exciting things that are going on, and let's see where the conversation goes from there.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of kind of what we were talking about earlier of clarifying vision over time. I think there are things that happen in our business journey and in our lives that can show us in a very small way the potential of following one small idea. And at first, we started off working with like big influencers and with basically any brand that would pay us. We knew we would do a good job, but there wasn't like a passion behind it. It was really just how do we build this business as quick as possible? We're a startup. And then actually after a conversation with one of the people who's been very successful in building a similar business, I asked them for help. It was really just a matter of like, I don't know how to get new clients right now. Like, I feel like we're failing. It was a very like heart to heart conversation. I can be emotional in those situations because I'll do anything. I will not sleep until the company is successful. I will not sleep until people get paid what they're worth. And that can become challenging when things are out of your control. So I'll be the kind of person who sits up all night trying to force it into my control. But one of the biggest pivots that we made was shifting completely into this niche of impact-driven businesses and nonprofits, and that was a bit rooted in, like, my own trauma. I've been through so much as a human being, like, I think that's part of the maturity as well. I've lived a lot of life for someone my age, and I knew with nonprofits after having a few encounters with them that they're started by trauma. They're people who are trying to take something horrible that happened to them and help other people who may be experiencing the same thing or help them avoid experiencing the same outcome. So I felt this deep like drawing to just help them. Like, how do I help these people who are trying to make a good of bad situations? Because
Yeah.
that's what I always did. I could align with them, I could resonate, we would speak, and it would be me actually guiding them in such a deep direction further than somebody in social media really would. And I'd say that was a huge turning point for the business overall. Um, we stopped focusing so much on money and started focusing on providing accessibility to organizations that otherwise wouldn't be able to afford what we do. We actually, huge breakthrough last week. I called everyone I knew. It was honestly one of the biggest moments I felt in probably 4 years, and it was very small. But it was one of those little things that was like, "Wow, this could help a lot of people, and we don't even realize it," and called my business partner, and he was like, "Oh, that's cool." It's like, "Why are you not screaming through the phone right now? This is the most insane thing," and it was because we finally got the ability to allow clients to pay with Affirm.
Oh, really? Okay. But it's those little
Yeah.
wins. I mean, John and I talk about just getting the small wins, 1% better every day. I will say, Linda, I did not get a message from you last week about your win that you
I was
had, so
crafting an
I'm a little
email.
disappointed
I
about
was
that.
crafting an email, like a really cool email with a bunch of announcements to send to everyone I knew. I haven't sent it yet, but
Okay,
we've
okay.
been waiting because
I had some FOMO there.
yesterday we just launched our new brand and website that's been in the works for most of 2024. So
Is it the
that
one
was
that's
gonna
up
be one of the
currently?
announcements. Yeah.
I'm looking at it right now, Michael. I wish we had video capabilities to screen share, but I mean, what you're doing, it seems amazing.
Thank you.
Congrats.
We're still populating some of it, but getting something out into the
Yeah,
world and then tweaking it as you go is the approach we like to take.
Yep.
Um, but
very
yeah,
cool.
that's been huge. The Affirm situation was so major for me because there's so many people that need our help, but actually can't follow through with it because of money. And I hate money being a hindrance to people.
Sure.
So it was like, okay, let's give people the opportunity to just handle it with a third party instead of us and pay over the course of 2 years because what we can do can get them in the position to pay it off in full within, 6 months.
Wow.
So it's so powerful. But, yeah, brought in a business partner earlier this year who has been working side by side with me to transition into exactly what we want to be, the direction I was taking the company, because some people have the agency mindset of, okay, let's outsource labor, let's do this as cheap as possible. But my business partner and I are really big advocates for using extremely talented people, taking the financial hit to create the best product. And that's why we'll make less money now, but we'll be very successful down the line.
Yeah. As a product management person from the tech space, I can greatly appreciate your focus on producing a high quality product for a great customer experience. Do not sacrifice that in any way, in any form, even if it means you get more dollars sooner. Like, play the long game. It will work out
Yep.
almost
I've
all the
never
time.
ever been open to the concept of sacrificing quality. That's one of the reasons why I was driving for Uber Eats and driving for DoorDash to pay for my meetings, taking really crappy nanny jobs to pay for my software.
Yeah. Like, being scrappy, I think, is part of the DNA of entrepreneurship. Like, you have to figure out how to leverage free trials to your advantage and how to become self-sufficient with certain things that you normally weren't good at or had any expertise in. You learn them, and then over time, they're either core to who you are and how you create value for the business, or you find someone to help
Yeah.
you uh, augment that work, and they become an employee and do good work in that area for you or
Yeah.
with you.
I have a big
Um,
piece of feedback to share for people.
yeah,
It's really easy to make a lot of money as an agency owner. And that comes with some really big integrity sacrifices if you take that route. There are plenty of agencies that are pumping fast turnaround times. They're giving super low prices. And a question that comes up is why would I choose you over them? They're so much cheaper and faster than you are. And you can go that route and you can scale like crazy and make a lot of money. But those reviews that hide in like all of your like little sections where you have reviews that you can't delete, like on Google, people read them. People read them and your credibility goes to the ground. One bad experience can ruin you,
Sure.
and it's not worth the risk ever. So if like I think there's zero option other than putting quality first and choosing to pay your rent with Uber Eats. You know? Like if you're gonna just try to make a quick dollar, like the company eventually it will catch up to you. You may make a ton of money right now, but that's what I see so much on social media. All of these people preaching, oh, start a like digital agency, do remote sales. You'll make so much money really fast. Like, look at my new Mercedes. And they may be telling the truth 20% of the time, but they're also like hurting people in the process. And that's really sad.
Linda, I want to pivot just for a second and ask you, because I know that you are incredibly ambitious, incredibly driven, independent. What thought process did you go through before you hired or before you found a business partner and decided to go that route?
Playing the long game. Actually, he said it best. He was in a meeting where somebody had asked, like, oh, like, how did you guys start working together? And he said, I took a sacrifice, and instead of having the whole pie, I decided to have a piece of it and hope that the pie would someday be bigger itself.
Mhm.
So you make a sacrifice. Giving away half of your company to someone is a huge decision. And it's not one that comes without a lot of deep reflection and thought. And it's not one that comes without thoroughly learning who that person is beyond what they're able to deliver. So we went through a large interview process where he didn't reach out to me. I reached out to him. I chose him before he chose me. So he was interviewing me too. I asked him to leave a company that he had built with complementary skills to me. And I need somebody who cares as much as I do about this company. And you don't find that in your typical employee. It was really, really challenging for me. And I spent a lot of nights staying up crying about it, honestly. But it's frustrating, and I saw that as kind of my only option to get somebody dedicated and focused. And it's worked out extremely well, but you have to try a couple people before you find the person that you're going to basically marry on paper.
Yeah. Back when I was in grad school, the capstone project of my team was around due diligence for investors around early stage startups. And a lot of what they look for, at least seasoned venture capitalists, they look for like the business
It's about the
model, the
founder.
market, is it a product? But it really comes down to the founder or co-founders and the characteristics of the people in a number of different dimensions. It's very interesting to get their perspective on this. And it was very common once we had a large enough group of people providing us feedback what some of those things we're looking for. And it definitely increases the probability of success or failure, the characteristics that they look for that they've seen through pattern recognition over time, if those are present or not in those people.
Yeah. I noticed like if you can spend a trial period with somebody as a business partner, nothing is set in stone yet, but you get to work through projects together. You get to work through those development activities. You get to see how they approach things. Like, will they answer your call if something goes wrong at midnight? And I think throughout this trial period since about May, I've just had my decision reinforced so many times. When we were developing this website, he said, leave it to me. Like, I don't even want you looking at the drafts. I'm keeping it in a different Webflow account so that you can't see it. I don't want you looking over my shoulder. And by the time that it launched, yesterday was basically the first time I took a really good look at it after it went live.
Mhm.
And I was blown away, not because it was cool. It is really cool, and I love that. He has superpowers when it comes to making things interactive, but he wrote what I would have written about us and why we do what we do.
Wow.
And that was
Nice.
the one piece of confirmation that really solidified my decision. I don't feel the need to change any of the text.
That's
And
awesome.
this is a big why website. So that's huge. It's a huge moment.
Well, congratulations.
That's cool. To have your partner not only fill the gaps that you feel exist, but to be able to step in where you feel it's complementary. That's a true partnership, and that's where true magic happens. Not the 1 + 1 = 2. It's a 1 + 1 = 5. It's you guys propel each other farther than you could ever go on your own. And
you need to think the same.
Yeah.
You need to have the same why. I think that's even bigger than the work itself, because you can always hire people to do the work. Eventually, the co-founders or co-owners of a company, they step out of the operations, and then what?
I think you nailed it. I think you have to share the why about what you're doing to make it durable. And thinking the same, I think it is helpful in some ways. But you also, like you in your situation, and I think John in ours, you want people that complement each other. They're thinking about the construct of things and how to do things and leverage strengths in different ways, because that's what makes for a great partnership.
I'm the big idealist, and he's the big bring you down to earth.
Well, I know that if Michael and I were both me, we would never get anything done, and we would still be working on episode 1. So thank God that
False.
He's nothing like me, and I just fall along on his coattails. But I think you're absolutely right, and what you have found is true gold. And you're right. You may not find it on the first try, and you got to go through various partners and various experiences and various trials to make sure that you are compatible to the degree that you and your partner are. And that's part of the process as well. But again, going back to the quitting, it's not quitting. You're just,
But you're getting set up for a big win when you bring on a really good partner.
Yeah.
There's double
yeah.
the force.
Yeah.
Double the
Exactly.
momentum.
Yeah, it's a force multiplier for sure. It's incredible.
And the support. There's nobody who can understand what you're going through more than somebody who is working on the same business and the same position as you.
Yep. Well, Linda, we are approaching the end of our episode, but we always ask our guests one thing, and that was if you had some practical advice to give or insight for those that are looking to going into their second act in life, or plan B, or if they have no plan B, how to start plan A. What would you like to leave our audience today?
I like to take a quote. One of my favorite other podcasters is Andy Frisella, and he says, everyone you admire was once a fraud.
Wow.
And I've always resonated with that because imposter syndrome is huge for anybody young who's listening.
Or old. It happens to us as well.
Yeah. Well, aside from that, for anybody young who's listening, it's really hard to start a business when you're at a young age.
Yep.
I think that a lot of people, when they start service-based businesses, are expected to have like 10 to 20 years of experience relevant to their client. And we don't get that. I didn't get to have that. I didn't have a bunch of case studies. It was like, somebody please trust me.
Mm-hmm.
My first client, the pricing was so interesting, was, okay, what's your budget? First off, never ask their budget. Second off, they told me, what do you think it's worth to work with you? And I underscoped, and they knew that. So they put less value into me. You are not less valuable because you're younger than other people. And the biggest challenge I've ever faced was not feeling understood by other people. And I don't think that's an age thing. I think no matter where you are as an entrepreneur, the opinions of your peers and the way that you tell them your problems, and they can come back with either, oh, like, that sounds really hard. Wow, I'm sorry. Versus like somebody who understands you and can say, oh, this is what I would do in that situation from my experience. Finding an equal balance of both is honestly the most powerful thing you can ever do. You need to find a support system as a number one priority, no matter where you're at in the journey.
It's good. It's real good. We talk about imposter syndrome a lot, Linda, and Michael and I have both experienced it in multiple phases of our life and multiple times, and it doesn't go away with every new thing that I experience. I always that's one of the first things I try to recognize and get over. And you're never going to be ready for that question of what am I worth until the first person asks it. And then you really put a number on it. And usually you're right. You lowball that and then you grow from there. But that's part of the growth. And that's the part of moving out of that imposter syndrome to know this is who I am. This is what I provide. This is what it's worth. You can take it or leave it. And usually when you take that stand, people recognize the value they're getting and they pay happily because they now know that you've moved out of that imposter syndrome and you're for real.
Yeah.
So I love that.
One last full circle moment that reminded me of is that first client. I underscoped it, and it was like that job took me full time. Like, and it was less than half of what I got at a low salary job. A couple of months ago, I scoped a project where I wasn't actually doing any of the work. It was just consulting. I scoped lower than I normally would scope now, but a bit higher than what I originally did for like triple the work.
Yeah.
And they came back with concern saying, oh, I don't feel like you're going to work as much on this because like if your rate is $250 an hour, that's only this many hours a month. Like, are you sure? Like, it's like we can pay more than that. We want your attention. And it was like, wow, you're concerned about working with me because I'm not charging you enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good reverse situation that you have there. But once you have the confidence and the conviction in what you can deliver,
yeah,
then
things get better.
The magic.
Things do get better.
Well, Linda, I think we're starting to wrap things up here, and thank you so much for coming on the show and for announcing during this recording the launch of your new website, Ekte Media. If you guys haven't checked it out, check out Ekte Media. It's incredible what they've done to their website. Aside from the website, where are some other places where people can go to find you and your business?
I would say LinkedIn is a great place. I also have some very early, like from the early days of me working on this company in like 2021, there's some entrepreneurship content on my TikTok page at Linda Hafstad.
Nice.
But yeah, LinkedIn is a great place to find me.
And it's Linda Hafstad?
Everywhere, Linda Hafstad.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll have those links both to your website, to your LinkedIn, in the show notes so people can connect with you and see this beautiful website that I'm looking at right now and learn more about what you guys and your brand are doing. So
thank you.
Yeah, man.
Super cool.
Linda, I joked earlier and said, you've done a lot in your 21 years and it's proof, and you're inspiring even to old bearded farts like Michael and I. And it's amazing to know that when you don't have a plan B and you're all in on a plan A, you're going to make it work and you're going to see it through. And when you find a partner that compliments you and is finishing, you're finishing each other's sentences. I almost said sandwiches. That
it's a Frozen reference.
Yeah. That you can achieve extraordinary accomplishments, and hearing that story of yours is amazing. So, thank you so much for being on the show, and
my pleasure.
Man, we look forward to watching you grow.
Thank you guys for having me.
For sure.
Yeah, you're welcome.
With that said,
Michael, that was an amazing episode.
It was.
I can't believe we're having guests like Linda on the show to encourage not only
I know.
our listeners, but to encourage what I'm doing and growing out of that imposter syndrome. And so great job today. Great job to Linda.
Great job, Linda.
I can't wait for next week. So with that, we'll see you.
The Second Act with Michael and John stars Michael Newborn and John Ballenger. The podcast is produced by Seltzer Kings. For more information on the show, check out michaelandjohn.com, or if you'd like to get involved in the conversation, give the guys a shout on their socials at The Second Act with Michael and John on most platforms. Thanks for listening.